2024. We do have a quorum with 3 commissioners present. Commissioners, can we get a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
I saw that.
Do you have a second?
To.
I'll second it.
Second. I was just wondering.
We're out of executive session.
Yes. Item number 1 are the minutes for October 11th, 2024.
Do I have a motion?
I wasn't here.
You weren't here. We need a motion on the approval of minutes of 11 October.
I'll motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
I wasn't here, so can't participate in that.
Oh, I will.
Well, it's approved.
It's just something that I would.
Item number 2 is the ratification of Public Integrity Bureau extension requests.
I already.
Are there any concerns from anyone?
I have
None
none.
heard. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3A under rule amendments is a proposed amendment to section 1A and C of the Civil Service Commission's procedures for the conduct of business meetings. Commissioners, as you recall, this was introduced at our last meeting. Dottie was doing some work in the procedures and noticed that there was some cleanup that was needed regarding that our procedures listed our former address in City Hall. And so this is just to clean up those procedures, make them consistent with our current practices.
Sounds good.
So can we get a motion if y'all are so inclined?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 4A, under classification and compensation matters, is a request from the Juvenile Justice Intervention Center for hiring rates for the Juvenile Detention Counselor Job Series, Food Service Worker Job Series, Juvenile Reentry Support Specialist, and Juvenile Justice Center Maintenance Superintendent job classifications. Robert Hagman from our Classification and Compensation Division will go over our class and comp items.
The hiring rate adjustments are meant particularly to help with our retention. Juvenile Justice Center can get people in based upon, in effect, the job demands. They believe that hiring rates are necessary in order to retain their staff of these specialized positions. And the hiring rates range from 6.25% to 20%.
Commissioners, we were very pleased to see that the Juvenile Justice Intervention Center was able to get budgetary approval to make us this request for these hiring rates. For a number of years, they've struggled to recruit and retain people. These are really difficult jobs. It's, working with incarcerated juveniles. It's tough work, and we're pleased to see that the budgetary allotment has been made to really recognize that. The way that Robert has structured the job series and the increases in the job series, the positions like the 2 and 3 and the supervisors, the increases were for a little bit more than the lower level, the entry level, so that if you stay on, the department's happy with you, you move through the job series, you're rewarded by those larger increases, and that's meant to retain people who want to be there and who the department wants to be there.
Okay, thank you. I think it's well thought out. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion carried.
Item number 4B is a request from the Juvenile Justice Intervention Center to create the new classifications for Juvenile Reentry Support Specialist Lead and Juvenile Reentry Support Supervisor.
The Juvenile Justice Center applied for a grant relative to establishing if you want to say, an enhancement to its case management program that basically they work with the youth who are in the center and help them transition back to the community. So these 2 new classes extend the current reentry support specialist position, and it will be creating a lead position as well as a supervisor position.
Is this near the end? How does it work when they get near the end of their term, so to speak? They get...
Yeah, basically the lead would be like a full performance position. Those people basically would train the newer staff, and the supervisor essentially has performance related responsibilities, and be basically, in effect, the salaries that are basically indicated for these new classes builds upon the present structure.
I think what you're asking is what happens if the grant goes away. Yeah, so if the positions are successful, a lot of times, the program's successful, a lot of times what the city would do is bring those positions into general fund funded positions if it works well. If the grant goes away and the city's not inclined to do that, then worst case scenario, you call for a layoff from the position.
Yeah, it's expected that this will be a long-term grant, and they expect that it will be, they'll be able to get the funding to renew it. So this is basically a trend in other juvenile justice centers. So I think that this fits in line with, if you want to say, best practices with respect to, the work of the juvenile justice center.
Right, and it would start as soon as somebody gets into the intervention center?
Right.
This
Generally-
process of reentry would start right away?
The process basically, in effect, there's other case managers in other areas. So basically, they do a needs assessment, and then basically where they believe the individual is able to, if you want to say, re-enter the community, these people will start to work with the people, the youth of the center.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No.
Have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, motion carried.
Item number 4C is a request from the Chief Administrative Office for a new grants job series.
The purpose of this new series is to centralize the grant management program that the city has. It's basically, in effect, there are a number of departments basically doing grant work, but this would be like sort of a centralized grant management department within a chief administrative office. Essentially, they would write the grants, manage the grants, as well, in effect, ensure that they're compliant with the objectives of the money that was received for the grant.
So the thought is that these positions would essentially pay for themselves with the grant funds that the city would receive.
Makes sense. Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 4D is a request from the library to create the new classification of Library Facilities Administrator.
This would be in an executive position that would be responsible for not only the infrastructure of the library, but the management of its day-to-day facilities. As an executive level, the salary would be $97,575.
Okay, any questions on this?
No.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, approved.
Commissioners, item number 5E is a request from the Fire Department for a new special rate of pay for emergency medical certifications for members assigned to the airport.
Presently, the paramedic.
I think, Commissioner Monteverdi, are you going to recuse yourself?
I'm going to
from this
recuse
item?
from this item,
Okay, so
which will
because,
create
correct,
the
so
need to
because we
defer.
only have 2 remaining commissioners, we will have to defer this item until next month for consideration.
Okay.
Item number 4F is a request for hiring rates for classifications impacted by the upcoming increase to the minimum weekly compensation threshold for exempt positions under the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yeah, the Department of Labor is changing the salary threshold required for exempt employees, and it's going to go up to $58,652 annually. Essentially, staff, as well as all other employers, you have 2 options. You can increase the salary to maintain the FLSA exempt status, or you can reclassify the classification and pay as non-exempt and pay overtime. And we did a combination of both. The city's basically, we're going to have an across the board, so we're incorporating these, if you want to say, minimal increases to get people to be able to meet the threshold. And we're also recommending, we have a number of classifications that are not in use at this particular time, and where there are no current incumbents, we're just going to remove exempt status.
Okay,
So this keeps us in compliance with federal law, which is always preferred.
Motion to approve.
Second.
okay, motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 5A, under recruitment and selection matters, is the approval of examination announcements 11182, 11182, and 11195. So you see, it's just small lists because there wasn't a lot of time between our last meeting and this meeting.
Right.
Just some different.
Still a good number.
Yep. Yep. So different positions. The Utility Chief Information Officer is a new class for Sewage and Water Board that the commission approved at the last meeting. So you'll see it's already posted and we're accepting applications for that position.
Okay. I have a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Okay. It's approved.
Item number 6 is a petition by the Police Association of New Orleans and the Black Organization of Police for injunction, investigation, and evidentiary hearing into the NOPD captains and majors promotional policy and testing.
Commissioner, may I bring up Mike Lasser and Anthony Bakewell in regards to...
Yes.
I have no problem with that.
Thank you.
We need another chair.
We got it. Thank you.
Oh, I was just waiting, I guess. Sorry.
Good morning, Commissioner. May I begin?
Morning.
Okay. Good morning. This is Eric Hessel on behalf of the Police Association of New Orleans. I have President Mike Lasser for panel here, Anthony Bakewell for BOP. BOP's attorney is not present, is not available right now. I'll speak on behalf of both, or Lieutenant Bakewell will speak on behalf of them. I think we basically all know why we're here. In late 2023, the NOPD asked this commission in the city to design, implement, and activate a promotional test for the positions, classified positions of captain and majors. Such a test was in fact formulated, it was paid for, it was financed by the city, and it was done pretty quickly, and I think in July of 2024, the test was given. The candidates had all studied for the test, they had all bought materials and invested their time and energy into studying and preparing for that test, as we would expect, and they did so. On September 23rd, that list was in fact published. But there was 22 candidates that were selected for possible promotion on the captain's list, 11 on the majors list. Important to note is all of those promotions were done in accordance with the accepted city policies and procedures, all of them. And the city in their response has said, we raised the Great Place to Work initiative in our petition, and I absolutely did. And that we raised the fact that in 2021, we faced a similar concern in regards to the sergeant's test. And guess what? It was all vetted by the city. Federal court said, no, that's okay, that's okay. And here we are, because apparently it wasn't okay. The procedures themselves, have they been approved? Yes. The political interference that has been admitted to is the major problem we face today. On September 25th, 2 days after the list was published, the city unceremoniously and secretively, I would say, rescinded 143R, CAO policy 143R, which was a result of the Great Place to Work initiative, which gave the city the ability to take over some of the testing from civil service. They did so, and for some reason, unexplained, that was revoked 2 days later. On October 2nd of 2024, shortly after the test list was being asked about by candidates, the candidates themselves were brought in by the superintendent, and the superintendent told them that there would be no promotions made from that list whatsoever, from either list, and it would be allowed to expire because of perceived unfairness in the testing procedure. They were given no other information, despite repeated requests for other information. They were given none. On October 3rd, the next day, there was another meeting with the superintendent, where she openly and freely admitted that the mayor said that there would be no promotions and the list would be allowed to expire without promotions being made. Again, no reasons, no explanations. There were no specifics, No written complaints, oddly enough, no written complaints from the mayor or the mayor's office outlining such complaints, outlining any evidence of such, which you would think that if the mayor had such complaints, they would have been filed in a timely fashion. Only after a significant period of time did some complaints come forward, anonymous, of course, not real specific, but those complaints did in fact correspond to what the mayor had told the chief, and that there was some allegations of bias or improprieties. The problem with that is it's anonymous. The bias and the improprieties are being brought against the highest levels of the New Orleans Police Department, the highest members of the New Orleans Police Department. That's concerning. What's also equally concerning is that so far, absolutely no evidence been brought forth to do that. But, again, the bigger problem is, by this time, regardless of the complaints, regardless of the evidence, prior to that, the mayor had already told the chief there are not going to be any promotions made from this list. If that's not political interference, if that's not political discrimination, I don't know what is. But the Civil Service Commission has its rules disallowing this. This is what the whole commission is about, is to keep the classified service free from political interference. And if this isn't a violation of that, I don't know what is. And if this commission doesn't feel that it's a violation of that, then I quite frankly don't believe we need a Civil Service Commission if they're not going to stand up to this type of political influence and interference. Now, with that being said, there's constitutional rules, there's regulations that need to be followed. Article 10 and the Home Rule Charter gives you all the ability to investigate this. I think it obviously needs to be investigated. The Great Place to Work Initiative, which it's not this commission itself, but the Civil Service Commission enacted, allowed these things to come out. I did raise those in a petition. The city's going to tell you they're irrelevant. I think they're relevant in this particular aspect. Great Place to Work Initiative doesn't seem to have made this place such a great place to work now that we're down 600 police officers from then and can't replace them. Primarily, if everybody does their homework and looks at the history of it, the major concern of BOP, FOP, PANO, was one of the major concerns was we were losing people because of the unfairness, because of the politicalness of the promotional system. So that's what we're asking for. We're asking for an investigation. We're asking for an injunction until such investigation is completed. I think there's room to work with everybody if we can find a way through this, if we can find a way to ensure that the testing procedure either wasn't corrupted, wasn't influenced, wasn't biased, and now that official anonymous complaints have been lodged, there will be an investigation. In this commission and the department has rules about that, how those things should be addressed, and I'll get into those shortly. But again, the reason we're here is to ask for this investigation, ask for this injunction. The Home Rule Charter, the Constitution gives you all the authority, says y'all shall investigate any complaints that you receive in writing within 60 days of the alleged infractions, and these certainly are timely. So what we're asking for is an investigation. What we're asking the city to do is, and there is room for negotiation here. We could withdraw certain portions in all or in part. What we want to do is show the members of the candidates, the members of the NOPD, the city, is that their money is not going to be wasted, that we're not going to allow the promotional system to be hijacked by anybody, whether it be the mayor or anonymous people working on behalf of somebody, because if that's going to be the case, and if this commission is going to allow that, we'll never have another promotion in decades, because all that you need to do is write up an anonymous complaint listing one or all of the persons involved, and then it's over with. It's done.
Eric.
Yes, sir.
could we get to, we've read what's been filed.
Yes, sir.
Could you address one of the principal arguments that the city made in their opposition memorandum, that for us to have an investigation at this point, it would be premature? Can you address the prematurity argument?
I think the investigation of prematurity is not accurate. I think the violation has occurred, the violation being political interference. I don't think anybody can debate that. That's occurred. The discrimination has occurred. Not one single person, according to the chief, will be promoted, at least at that time, will be promoted until that is addressed. So we got 33 people that are all being denied promotions based on one person, the mayor. That in and of itself, I think, is ripe for investigation. The other matters, I think, are just going to fall in line with those to see if there was political interference. How did that violate the discrimination? We know how that discrimination, there's other things out there that an investigation is needed for to determine why. We know what she did is not allowed by the Constitution. We know it's not allowed by the rules of civil service. And we know that occurred. We know that because the chief has said it over and over and over, repeatedly and publicly and on tape. And nobody will dispute that. So that's occurred. And I'll grant this, the Great Place to Work initiative, despite it being a complete and utter failure, it's been approved. 143R, despite the fact that I wrote in 2014, in regards to the Great Place to Work initiative, we wrote, PANO, because we were the only ones that did stand up against it initially, was our most significant concern regarding the Great Place to Work initiative is the fact that many of the proposed rule changes will erode these employee protections, and some may be in violation of state law and be unconstitutional. And here we are, and we have that. When we petitioned against 143R, we wrote, the criteria implemented and considered by the promotional committee are all unconstitutionally subjective, vague, and subject to impermissible political manipulation. And here we are. So those aren't being challenged. And the fact that they haven't been any promotions yet made, so it's therefore premature, well, once again, you're gonna allow somebody to, I guess they put in a position of discriminate against everybody. We're not going to be able to say anything because it's premature. Discriminate against one person, we'll take up that case. That's the problem we have here. And I think it's an easily solved problem when you just accept that the mayor has politically interfered in this process.
Let me ask you that. If under the civil service rules, the civil service director has the ability to extend the list by 3 years. Let's assume that takes place today. How would that affect the petition that you filed and the relief that you're seeking? What, if any, part of your petition would be disposed of by such an action by the civil service director today to say, we're not going to kill this list, we're going to extend this list pursuant to the authority that the civil service director has for 3 years? How does that then affect what is before us today?
Initially, I would tell you that I think that would be acceptable. Now, what would happen in return? I would tell you PANO's position is that being that the list was promulgated and the test was given under adherence to the approved rules of this commission, the approved rules of the consent decree, and the approved rules of the federal monitors, and as well as the federal judge, that the list be enacted and the city promotes as necessary from the list. There's another thought that because of the now filed anonymous complaints that name specific individuals, and unfortunately there was a very high-ranking individuals, and their captains and majors and candidates who are now saddled with being labeled potentially corrupt, unfair, cheaters, whatever you may call it, there's a provision that NOPD has, whereas if you're under active investigation, you can't be promoted. I don't know why we would sit here and punish persons who took this test, who have no allegations against them of wrongdoing whatsoever, anonymous, named, or anything else. We're basically it's just, the city just wasted $103,000 for absolutely nothing.
Can I interrupt you, but you haven't really answered my question. You have a request for injunctive relief, request for investigation. Assuming the list gets extended by 3 years, how does that affect, if it does, in your view, your request for injunctive relief, and how does it affect your request that we do an investigation?
I believe an investigation has to be done under any circumstances, regardless of whether the injunction is in place or not. I think the injunction we can certainly consider as both associations are sitting here today, consider lifting in all and in part the injunction.
Okay.
I'm a bit suspicious, not of this committee or this commission, but of the city's ability to work without some type of hatchet over their heads,
Can I?
if that answers your question.
It does, yeah, and certainly this commission is going to do what we feel is right.
That's all we
At
ask.
the end of the day, but I wanted to get to where we are, and assuming that action takes place by the Civil Service Director shortly, whether we are still looking at injunctive relief, and I think you've answered my question. I understand that the request for the investigation was you're still asking that proceed, but the extension of the list for 3 years would have a significant impact on your request for injunctive relief.
It
Right.
very well may, and of course, I would like Mr. Bakewell, Lieutenant Bakewell, the president of the Black Organizational Police, to speak. I think he's got something to say on that also.
Good morning. I believe extending it 3 years just for sake of not punishing the people currently, you wind up punishing the people that would be able to take this test in the future to have to wait because we get an extension because something was done wrong on a test this year. What I'm saying by that is you have people that were not eligible to take the test. If you just extend it 3 years because we have a storm over here with this situation, then you're prohibiting those other persons to take the test in the time frame that they would be expected to take the test. If you're just going to extend it solely because we can't get through this in a time frame.
So 3 years is our standard term for promotional eligibility.
What does it matter how long it's extended when the appointing authority is committed to promoting no one off of the list? Right?
You would,
So you're going to have a mummified list that sits around for 3 to 6 years. Then you're going to have, on the question of timeliness, at that point, if they wanted to wait 3 to 6 years to satisfy this argument that this petition is untimely because nothing has happened yet, I anticipate that the kind of argument at that point would be like, well, you should have done this 5 or 6 years ago. Meantime, the money has been spent. Meantime, people's careers have progressed 5 or 6 years, which is, in a lot of cases, 25% of somebody's entire working life in employment. So I don't even have an answer to, like, what if the list gets extended? I don't even care because they've already said no one's getting made off this list.
And something that I haven't addressed yet, but needs to be addressed because it goes back to the problem that NOPD has been facing for quite a long time, and you just kind of touched on it. These individuals that are trying to better themselves, trying to raise themselves in the rank, better the police department, and this is causing them to look other places, causing people below them to say, you know what, the promotional system's still not fair, and we might see another exodus, which we just simply can't afford.
The reason why I bring that up is we got to take this step by step by step. The reason why I bring up about the extension of the list is because there's been allegations that the list was going to get killed. Well, if the list is extended 3 years, the list is not going to get killed by anyone and just by having the list expire at the end of 1 year. So it seems to me that that's one way to avoid any attempt by anyone that we're just going to let the list expire at the end of 1 year.
And I understand what you're saying, and because I can tell you, at least in my belief, that if it was going to only be a year in an investigation, the city would drag their feet, and there's no way in the world an investigation would get done in a year.
It's recognized, too, that this is a test that was given after people studied for a year to prepare for it. So we're well over a year into the process at this point. That doesn't come down to timeliness of legal action, but it comes down to the experience of the test takers themselves.
And I believe Captain Glass would also like to address the commission.
Good morning. I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said, but I do want to cover a couple of points. One is, we're deferring the answer again for a long time. One of the problems with this list and every other list is that we are attempting to keep people on board. They come here, they get trained, they get experience, and they go somewhere else. We need to give them a future, and that future generally takes the shape of a promotion. They need to have confidence that if they're going to study, if it's going to be announced, it's going to be a process, that process can't be implemented, and then at the last moment, we'll yank the rug out and say, nah, we didn't do it right. We'll come back next year and do this, or 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years. They're not going to wait around. That's going to severely impact people's ability and desire to stay here. That's the ripple effect.
Or come here in the first place.
The other part to that is that, and it's problematic, is that we've never been told exactly what was wrong. That list was published on the 23rd of October, and 10 days later, it was a problem. 2 days after it was released, that's when the CAO rescinded his policy, presuming that implies that the policy was problematic. Otherwise, why would it be rescinded? And why would it be rescinded 2 days after the list is published? 10 days later, we're told the list is not going to be used at all. We're just going to let it expire without an explanation. We were never told why it was a problem. Later on, it was inferred that the problem was bias on the part of the evaluation part, because now we're talking about bringing in outside assessors to review the same thing that our panel of deputy chiefs did. We still don't know if that's the case, but that's the inference. So now we have, also on top of that, we have anonymous complaints suggesting there was cheating being done by certain individuals, which has no basis in fact that we know of. There's no attachment of any kind of supportive evidence. It's just an anonymous allegation. So based on these things, we're left with a list that's not going to be used. And if we defer it, if we extend it 3 years, that's great, but what happens in the 3 years that we're waiting for that to happen? What's going to change, is my point. What's going to change a year from now? These allegations can be investigated fairly quickly and resolved. That's one thing we can do. But what about the process?
And even
The
if
city
they,
the city has tacitly agreed that with City Hall and/or the police department manipulating the list after it's published by civil service, it's a problem. How do we know that? Because they rescinded their own policy and they said our list that we created is no good. Well, why? Why would that happen? That's the argument we have, is that civil service creates a list, and we're happy with that. As soon as the department or the City Hall gets it, now it starts to have problems by their own admission. And we still don't really know what that is. We don't know what that is. So deferring the problem for 2 or 3 years, it solves one problem, but it creates others. And the morale problem is, it'll self-correct after a year or two, but look at the damage we're going to have in that time.
frankly, I disagree with you, Mr. Glazer. I think the morale problem persists for the length of these people's careers. In Pano's petition here, it refers to a case of which I was seriously affected. One of the reasons I'm sitting here today is in that year, I was sitting on the other side of this table, and we had to fight tooth and nail to get unconstitutional promotions overturned. We're going on 10 or 11 years since that day, and the ripple effect is not only still being felt, but still creating domino effect problems that we're still trying to pull out from. It drove people away in droves. It hampered the ability to bring people in. It's only now 10 years later that in the department I work for, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel of the the bleakness that was created by the one of the cases that your petition, I think, very aptly refers to. And
And in that case, it took some digging to get to the political.
absolutely.
Here, you don't have any digging. It's right on top of the ground.
Sure.
It's not even covered up with dirt. It's there. It's admitted to.
I think bottom line is our people are looking for something to be resolved with this, and deferring it down the road will erode whatever confidence they have left in this process.
Let me make sure you understand where I'm coming from. By raising the issue about the list being extended, I'm not kicking anything down the road, okay? I'm trying from a legal standpoint, I think Eric can appreciate this, to make sure we address the injunctive relief and the investigative relief. He's addressed it to my satisfaction, that it will not have any effect upon the investigative relief part of the petition, but have an effect on the injunctive relief. I think, with all due respect, it might be time to hear from the city.
Yeah, I think it's time to hear from the city.
Thank you, Commissioners. William Goforth on behalf of the City of New Orleans. There's a lot to talk about here, so I want to start by going back to the beginning of the factual allegations that were listed by counsel for Pano. Again, those are all allegations. Two things that we know that are not in dispute is that promotions to major and captain under the current list have not happened yet. The other thing we know is that the CAO policy governing promotions to classified non-civilian positions was rescinded for the purpose of allowing each department with those types of positions to develop their own policy specific to that department. That's specifically stated in the notice rescinding the policy. Beyond that, everything else is allegations. But importantly, the investigation that's being asked for is not an investigation into any violation of the civil service rules or the Louisiana Constitution. The Louisiana Constitution says that appointments and promotions to the classified service must be based on factors including merit, fitness, etc., etc. Until a promotion or appointment is made, that provision can't be violated. The decision about whether to fill a position or create a new position and fill that position, whether it's a vacant position or a new position, is not controlled by that constitutional provision, nor is it subject to any civil service rule. That is an executive decision that is within the discretion of the City of New Orleans to decide for numerous reasons how to allocate its resources and how to operate city business based on how it wants to apply its personnel. So what we're talking about right now is it's investigating something that hasn't happened. Pano is asking for this commission to essentially look at why the City of New Orleans has not yet decided to make promotions to captain and major. And I will point out that right now, there are no vacant positions in either of those ranks. There is one major. There's not a vacant major position. There's been consideration about adding major positions, and there are currently no vacancies in the captain's positions. So there's not even any vacancies that are being left open at the moment.
Let me ask you this question. Isn't political interference into the civil service promotional process an unconstitutional violation?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'm going to try to ask it as best as possible. Political interference is a very vague term. We've already had this argument before. Political discrimination, which is something prohibited by the Louisiana Constitution and by the civil service rules, is discrimination against an employee on the basis of their support or lack of support for a candidate for office. It's not some nebulous decision that's, whatever the petitioners want it to be. So political interference here, there has been no allegation that there's been interference in order to increase support for a candidate or to punish somebody for lack of support. There's nothing like that.
Well, I think there has been. The whole point from the petitioners is that there's an allegation of political interference into this process, and the petitioners are asking us to do an investigation, not telling us at this point to say whether it's right, wrong, what happened, what didn't happen, but that we as a commission have a duty and responsibility to investigate to determine whether there was any unconstitutional action that took place in regard to promotions. And if we don't do our job in that regard, then there's a problem. That's the position of the petitioners. And so I'm asking you, and I know you're saying, well, it's vague. I think you know where I'm coming from. It's pretty clear. So isn't political interference, I'm not saying that it did or did not occur. I think there's cases, I think it's very clear that that would constitute an unconstitutional violation. And if so, don't we have a duty to investigate whether that did or did not occur?
Okay, so I think there's two sides to this. One, I disagree that there's been any allegation in the petition that states a fact that would match a violation of the Constitution. There have been the magic words political interference, but that doesn't mean that anything happened. The actual allegations have been that there have been no promotions made, and there was allegedly an order not to make any promotions. And that doesn't violate any civil service rule or any constitutional provision. It doesn't. The only requirement is that when promotions are made, they have to be done on a certain basis. There is no requirement that promotions be made. It's not there.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let me take out the political interference part of it and say, doesn't this commission, if there is any potential unconstitutional violation that takes place in regard to the classified service, don't we have a responsibility to investigate?
If the commission can identify a constitutional violation that has been alleged, then certainly it's within the commission's jurisdiction to investigate. My position is that that hasn't happened.
And Mr. Supernaut, if I may help, maybe Will, the vagueness of political interference, I think we can compare it to the Supreme Court case regarding pornography. You'll know when you see it. I think y'all see it, and we got a full-fledged orgy going on right now. And whether that's pornographic or not is going to be up to you guys. It's political interference. It can't be anything else. When the mayor unilaterally says, we're not promoting, or tells the chief, you're not promoting from that list. They want to say that it was, we haven't promoted. No. Why would they ask for promotions if they weren't going to promote? Why would they ask for a test to be given?
The civil service system is otherwise known as a merit system as well. There's no merit involved in the circumstances you're alleging. So I think that's a serious enough allegation to stand on its own 2 feet, because it dispenses entirely with the notion that there was a testing procedure in place.
It disregards all of that unilaterally.
Commissioners, may I address that point? What it seems like the petition is asking for, and again, I do want to point out that there's been no specific request for injunctive relief. There's been a request for an injunction, but they haven't said what they want the commission to do. And it is very hard to understand what the commission might actually do in terms of an injunction here. But it's been inferred is that they're asking that the city of New Orleans be ordered to make promotions off of a list. And that goes outside of to fill vacancies or to create new positions. And that goes outside of anything this commission has done before. We've had the Accord case where promotions have happened and the commission has said that those promotions were not merit-based and that there was relief needed to individuals because they were passed over improperly. That's not what we're talking about here. No one has been promoted. There's no one that has been promoted instead of other individuals for an improper basis. We're talking about the commission, or the city's business decision about whether and when to make promotions in the first place. That's not a merit-based decision. That's a city decision. That's a business decision that may include political factors. There's no admission that that's happened here. What we're saying is that there are reasons outside of the commission's purview of the factors that should be used in about which candidate to select, and we're now moving into the city's business as to whether promotion should happen at all.
So why does the city not want to make anyone off the list? Does the city think every candidate on that list is who passed? I assume, fill me in here, the list was ranked, scored, they sat through interviews. There's, at this point, I presume, a list of eligibles on deck. But the city, the appointing authority doesn't see fit to make any of them. That sounds to me like they're passing over differently sort of than the ACORD case, which I'm pretty familiar, where individuals were passed over as the list was hopscotched about. They're just doing it on a greater scale and passing over the entire list, right? Help me see the difference.
What I'm suggesting here is that we have a list that was based on the civil service exam, right, that ranks the candidates, and then there was a process based on the CAO policy and NOPD procedures to conduct additional evaluation that resulted in a final list that would be the order in which candidates were promoted when promotions are to be made. That has all happened, and at this time, the city has essentially paused making promotions off of that list in order to look at how that city process was done and evaluate whether it was done fairly. And that's based on concerns that were raised.
Is there some kind of time frame for this evaluation to occur?
This is a developing situation. I don't have...
Speaking of vagueness.
I understand, but the city should be allowed to make those decisions. The city is committed to making promotions fairly and on the basis of merit and in compliance with the civil service rules.
We want to hold them to one standard of
They're
vagueness.
allowed to make that decision, but it's got to be done in accordance with civil service policy, the Constitution, fundamental fairness, due process, and the rules. And they're way outside of all of that.
I think we got to keep in mind that we're looking at this on a step-by-step basis. Nobody is sitting here saying, at this point in time, we're going to force the city to make any promotions. What we are looking at is whether we should do an investigation to develop all these facts. And then we're going to figure out what we're going to do. Because the way I read the Accord case is, I know I've read the case, and I think that the Accord case provides this commission, we're not at that point, okay? Provides this Civil Service Commission with the power to order promotions of those who have been unconstitutionally denied a promotion. Okay, so if we do an investigation and we determine that one or more individuals have been unconstitutionally denied a promotion, then I believe the ACORD case gives us as a commission the right to order that those promotions be made. Another question I have to the city is, why did, and I understand what you're saying about a pause and everything else, why did the taxpayers of this city have to spend $106,000 for these two tests to get to a point where the mayor and the superintendent says, oh, we're not going to make any promotions? We have enough things we have to deal with in this city, and we're only spending $106,000 of our money to pay for these tests that basically the city said, oh, we don't even need to do anything about it at this point. Well, why did that take place?
I understand your concerns, and I think the commission has purview over those tests and the expenditure of those funds, and that's a legislative matter that is certainly within the commission's jurisdiction. That's not an issue for an investigation into whether the civil service rules or the Constitution was violated. And what I'm suggesting here is that if the commission is going to conduct an investigation as requested by Pano's petition, it needs to identify a very specific potential violation that occurred in this case and that is being investigated, because I can't find one.
What's the city's very specific
That's
reason
what I'm saying.
on their side, though?
I'm sorry, sir, I don't think I understood.
I'm just saying you're holding them to a different standard than you're holding your own argument. They can't be vague, but you guys can be vague.
Again, this is about whether the city's decision to about when and whether to make promotions is subject to investigation
Okay.
and review by this commission. And if the commission cannot identify a constitutional provision or civil service rule that governs that process,
I would
there shouldn't be
identify the entire
investigation.
Article 10 of the state constitution, which empowers this commission to look out for the greater public interest by ensuring that the merit system is respected and observed. And the waste of money, the waste of time, the morale problems all go to the bottom line of protecting the public interest. We protect that public interest best in this venue by protecting the interests of those employees, but the domino effect you hope to achieve, the employees have their unions. The citizens have the Civil Service Commission. I think it's often misunderstood that this commission actually exists. It's a part of the city government that exists to help deliver positive, efficient service to the taxpayers. That is best achieved. It's been determined over time. And as Pano points out in their petition, iteratively, through a variety of legal and legislative decisions, that is best done by this commission having a close eye over some of these processes.
I've been on this commission since 2019. We have so many problems in the city with retaining police officers, recruiting police officers. Now we're getting to a point where we have qualified police officers, arguably, who have been working for the city for years, who have been denied promotions based on the allegations being made. What do you think that does to morale? I mean, for us to basically punt on this, that is a further indictment of our entire process. We have an obligation, in my view, to take a full and complete look at this, to see exactly what happened, and to not push this down the road, and to basically say, we as a commission are charged with this particular responsibility, and for us to not do that, shame on us.
I agree.
Can I just make one more
Let me say something, and a little bit of a devil's advocate here. There's no vacancies at this point. There's no requirement to make a promotion by the city. There's an intent, or at least to not look at this list and use it at this point, but there's been no action not to use it. And if we're going to extend it for 3 years, and then we wait for vacancies, and then there's no action, then I think we have something more substantial to investigate. But at this point, I kind of am swayed by the city's argument that there's really been no violation.
And what I would say there is obviously the superintendent has publicly stated also she intended to create 2 major positions. And to say, again, no disrespect, but to say there's been no violation, I think just misses the entirety of the mayor's interference in this process. And the city is moving, not only are they being very vague about what the problem is, if there's a problem, but they're moving their position. The chief made it quite clear there was going to be no promotions and the list was going to expire. Now this word is being tossed about paused. Well, paused until when?
Can I just-
July of 2025?
Well, perhaps at least
A day after it's been expired?
At least until there is a need for sergeants and captains. I'm hearing right now there is no need for promotions of sergeants and captains. Is that correct?
So to Commissioner Corn, this is only the latest in a long line of promotional controversies that have become the norm over the time period that the police unions are referring to. Only the latest. If this was the first, or if it was one that came after a great length of time, I might be a little more seeing it from your point of view, but it's only the latest.
Sir, if I may
We do have a speaker card, too, if might be an appropriate time for that. Rebecca Gobert.
Hello, everyone. Rebecca Goubert. I am on the current captains list that we're talking about right now, so I just have a few thoughts as well. Policy 143R, I am a member of PANO as well. We have tried to fight 143R since it came into existence, and at every turn, we're told this is a fair process. So going forward into this test that I was taking, which was an expense to me to have materials, was a time suck on my life to study for it. It takes a mental toll. There's anxiety in taking tests like this. I took all that on. I learned what 143 required of me so that I would put my best performance forward, which again was an expense to me, to send myself through my own money to schools and such like that so that I would perform well in that section of how 143R is graded. I go into the test. I scored pretty well. When the list was all said and done, I was number 2. After this is all done, I'm told, oh, 143R doesn't count anymore. And we're going to kill the whole list for some reason because the mayor doesn't like it. That's what I was told in a meeting by the chief. No specifics. I know that as a civil servant, if I'm aggrieved by a process, I come here, right? I fill out the form. I get to sit here in front of you all and I get to say what was wrong with the process and you all tell me whether I have an argument or not. I didn't get that process because the mayor just decided unilaterally we're not going to promote off this list. Your time, your money, your energy, all the things you did to be competitive doesn't count this time. For no reason that I can tell you, just we're not going to count it.
Right.
That aggrieves me as a civil servant that I had no due process in that, so to speak. And for the city to say, well, there's no vacancies, how disingenuous that you are going to give a majors test after all these years and then say, well, there's no vacancies. Of course there's vacancies. There's 2 vacancies the chief sat in front of the whole department and said we were going to fill. How disingenuous to say that to me now.
First of all, congratulations on your placement on the list. There's another person in this room that was number 2 on their promotional list that went through something very similar to what you're going through right now. And the Acord case, if anyone wants to look at it, will reveal who that was. But it's eerily familiar. It gets to the core of what I'm saying. This is the latest, and how many times are we going to go through this again and again?
And to say that we don't have cause to make a motion until I have been skipped on the list, I will never even get the chance to be skipped on a list.
Because they've said the list is never going to be promoted.
I won't even get a chance to make an argument how I am, according to the city, supposed to make the argument because I have to be skipped first. Well, what a way to circumvent that to all the employees. We're just going to keep killing it. It's not outcome driven. This list is not outcome driven. It was performance driven by my own merits. I advanced myself through my own hard work on this department and my performance on test.
How many hours a day would you say you spent preparing to take the test over how long of a period of time?
I would say that I spent about $1,000 in extra classes and certifications so that I would be competitive according to 143R.
Yep.
And the hours that took. I mean, hundreds of hours of, reading things on my phone and listening to podcasts to stay current on relative, all of the things. I would say I spent hundreds of hours and thousands of my own dollars to be competitive according to the process that was laid out before me, only to have that rug pulled from under me to say, it doesn't count anymore.
And at the top of these lists, some of these rankings are separated by fractions of a point. So she's but one example of a type of person that spent massive amounts of money, massive amounts of time, emotional and mental energy to do what was asked for them, which was show excellence and earn, through their merit, a chance to be promoted.
I think, the need, nobody's arguing the need at all. And to a person up here, there's nobody that's going to kill that list on this city council, on the Civil Service Commission. None of us are inclined to kill the list. It's just...
No, the city's going to let it expire, but
Right,
it's
it's just gonna be
genuinely
this
saying
zombie
that
list.
there's no vacancies to be filled when you gave a test for major because you were making vacancies.
Right, but if the list is extended for 3 years, it's not going to die. They can't kill it.
But it doesn't help if the
I also
statement is
don't want
already
to,
made that they'll
I mean, my
never promote.
fellow officers that are, lieutenants that are with me, I mean, people who are eligible to take tests now, I didn't get to take a sergeant's test for my first 13 years on this job because there was never a test given. I don't want to pass that along to other people. Tests should be given regularly. I don't want to extend a list, and then I've aggrieved other civil servants by extending the list to my own benefit, but not to theirs. I certainly don't want to do that either.
You probably also sacrificed in the form of, in studying and preparing to do as well as you did, you probably passed up other opportunities of economic interest to you, like overtime or details. Because
Certainly.
I can say, as somebody that studied 8 hours a day for 9 months to rank second on a list, it takes that much time. These lists are, these tests that civil service devises are well designed, they are challenging, and they should be, because it's something valuable that you were meant to earn, and you did.
Just so you know, when something just doesn't sit right with me, and this doesn't sit right with me,
Thank you.
okay? It just doesn't. And I feel for me to do the best possible job I can do is I want to develop all the facts because I have an uneasy feeling about this whole thing. And so I feel if we develop the facts fully, completely, give both sides a full and fair opportunity to present whatever information they want to present in an evidentiary hearing before this commission, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And I think that's our responsibility, and that's where I'm coming from on this.
And that's what we're asking today, for an investigation into it. If there was interference by the mayor, political interference, however we're going to term it, I'm not a lawyer, right? I'm just a police lieutenant. But certainly the mayor doesn't need to approve of a list in order for us to be promoted off of it. And that seems to be what is happening in the police department, that she needs to bless the list first before we can be promoted off of it, like a sheriff would in a system without civil service.
I think there's a proposal, if we do have a hearing, would be on January 10th. Is that correct? I think that's more than enough time for the city to come up with some kind of reason why they're not going to promote off this list.
Are you ready for some motion?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Could I just make one request before the commission votes?
Yeah.
I would just ask that if the commission is going to conduct an investigation, that it clearly define what the scope of the investigation is so that the city can adequately prepare to present the information and make sure the commission is presented with the evidence it needs.
I'm going to make a series of motions, and I'll do one at each time, and the commission can vote on each one of them. I move to grant PANO and BOP's October 22, 2024 petition for investigation, page 9, paragraph 2, into whether the Department of Police's decision not to promote eligible candidates from the July 16, 2024 civil service eligible list for police captain and police major violated Article 10 of the Louisiana Constitution and/or civil service rules, and that an evidentiary hearing shall be scheduled for January 10, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. before a panel of commissioners. Counsel for NOPD, PANO, and BOP shall work with the Commission's counsel to prepare a pretrial order setting forth specific issues of fact, issues of law, a list of exhibits, and a list of witnesses so that we can have a full, fair, and complete evidentiary hearing before this commission. It's my first motion.
I'll second that.
Are we going to do one at a time?
One at a time.
Okay.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, I concur as well.
Okay. My next motion, I move to deny PANO and BOP's request for an injunction at this point prohibiting the Department of Police from promoting candidates from the July 16, 2024 civil service list of eligible candidates for police captain and police major as requested on page 9, paragraphs 1 and 2.
Do I have a second? No. Okay. I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Deny?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, the motion carries 2-1.
I move to defer any relief to candidates on the July 16, 2024 civil service eligible list as requested on page 9, paragraph 4, pending the investigation that this commission will do.
Sorry, that's to defer?
Correct. And that's, I'll repeat it, it's moved to defer any relief to candidates on the July 16, 2024 civil service eligible list as requested on page 9, paragraph 4 of the petition, pending the investigation that this commission will do.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I see what you're saying.
That's a second?
No, I was saying I understood what he was describing. I'm not seconding.
Okay, I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nay. Okay, that motion carried. All right.
Thank you very much for your appreciation of this
Thank you, everybody.
matter.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Commissioners, we do have one more item on the agenda. Item number 7 is a request from Mubashir Magbul for retroactive application of Rule 4, Section 2.7, Extraordinary or Superior Qualifications Pay. And Commissioners, as you recall, Mr. Magbul appeared before you at the September Commission meeting, a meeting asking for retroactive application of the Extraordinary Qualifications Pay Rule. At that time, the Commission instructed Mr. Magbul to return at a subsequent meeting with dated documentation that it was indeed Sewage and Water Board's intention to provide for that Extraordinary Qualifications Pay. Mr. Magbul sent us a correspondence and notified us that he is unable to provide that documentation, and he just asked that the Commission make a final vote on his request on the record.
Okay, no documentation.
And so staff's recommendation was to deny the request.
Do I have a motion on that request?
Sure, I'll move to approve the staff's recommendation to deny.
Second.
Okay. Okay, motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners. That's all the business we have before you today.
Thanks.
Can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
Second?
Motion carried.
I really got